Welcome to HJT Design Radio Straight Talk, a show dedicated to exploring all aspects of creating a great dental office, where the only dumb question is the question that's not asked. Here's Jim and Han.
Welcome to the show. Jim Jarvis here, and along with me, my co-host, Han Tron. Welcome, Han.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We should have
episode number 2, Who Do I Need on My Project Team? This one's going to be a rather technical, but at the same time, I think, exciting introduction into what we call team building. Not in the fashion that most people understand team building, but team building in a way that creates what we coin the foundation of your project. Now, this could be a project that is a new construction. It could be a renovation. It really doesn't matter. There's a core group of people that you need to have as part of your team. Once that core is created, that gives you the solid base, the base that you can build around to move forward as you basically make decisions on, as we talked about in the last show, the needs, wants, and desires that are part of your program. But before we get into the show, I'd like to take a few seconds, Han and I would, and really thank Dr. Murph from North Carolina and Dr. Fletcher from Texas. They hosted and put on the seminar last Saturday over in Chicago by the airport. And we, along with others, presented during that seminar and really had, I'd say, quite an enjoyable time. There were a variety of states represented, a bunch of vendors who had things to be able to show. And we just had a great, enjoyable opportunity getting to know everybody. And again, we'd just like to thank them for what they've been doing. They've been doing this for many years, and it was our first opportunity to work and present in that. We look forward to doing it again and again. Wouldn't you say, Han?
Hey, Jim?
Yes.
I'm sorry, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty because we have two programs running at the same time.
We have two programs running at the same time? I don't hear anything other than
yes.
myself.
I do.
What do you hear? Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I just hear you.
Okay. It sounds like better. Because it was like a whole bunch of us talking at the same time. I am.
Okay. It's on your side, and it's not
going
going across the airways that way. Excellent. Well, let's jump into the topic of the project team. Like we discussed in the intro, there is a core, and that core really consists of, obviously, number one, the owner. Now, we're not looking at this as a hierarchy of number one is more important than number two. It's just this happens to be the numeric version of how we put them together. Next is your accountant. Obviously, we'll go through these and talk about them in specifics. But, looks like I've lost Han, but hopefully he'll be able to connect back in. And I'll send him the invite and connecting back in so he can continue on as a guest host. Next is the banker and the lender. Those basically are the same entity, but sometimes take on a unique fashion. Obviously, your attorney, very important when it comes to dealing with legal documents, and the architect designer, that's the role that we typically fill. And then your dental equipment specialist. Dental equipment specialist, you know them. Those are the folks that provide you with all your materials and your equipment. As we said before, we do not work exclusively with any We work with all of them out there, giving you the flexibility to be able to pick and select as needed on the pieces of equipment or the products or the systems that you like to integrate into your project. And then lastly of your core is the construction partner. Now, we list it as a partner only because that they, in fact, are very key in putting together what we do and how we do it. But at the same time, they're very important to how and what is being done in your local area, specifically having to do with the costs and things that are associated to that. Okay. Han, are you back? Han, are you there?
Yes, I'm.
Okay. I just went down through the core list 1 through 7, and so that will get us started into the discussion of each individual part. Let's talk a little bit about the accountant. And if you'd like, Han, I'll let you open that up and enumerate a little bit about what their role is and how we look to them and what their advice is.
Yeah, I think money is the big driving factor whether the project's going to be successful or not. The conversation that before you start the project is to find out what you can afford, because it would be a disaster for you to start the design process and all that, and then when you get the bid, come in and discover that it's a lot more than a lot more money than you have, and then you have to run out and find out what you had to mortgage and borrow and beg for. So your accountant would be probably one of the first team member that you need to start the dialogue with, so to just ensure that the project is all the numbers in its proper places before you go forward. Jim? Exactly,
and actually they create the documentation that's necessary to talk with the next team member, which is the banker lender. Your accountant should have an understanding of exactly where you're at, what you're doing, how you're doing on a monthly basis, how you're doing on a yearly basis, have all your tax records and such created so that they can basically give that information over to the lender as they begin to prepare their information. We had an individual by the name of Mike Montgomery, who's the senior loan officer with Live Oak Bank. He presented at the Chicago seminar last Saturday and had a wealth of information. And in that, he and his people have a system that allows them to really evaluate and understand and create, again, a system that would be useful for moving forward and actually lending, of course, for your particular project. So the banker, the lender, has a couple roles. The first role is there are costs, and we'll have other shows in talking about what are all the costs associated with doing. But quickly, in a nutshell, there's soft costs, there's construction financing, and then there's your final loan cost. Those are the three main categories. And in soft costs, there are things like engineering, architectural fees. There are civil assessment fees, building permit fees, quite a few different. There's application fees, both for lending as well as application fees for permitting and zoning. And there could be a menagerie of costs that are what's considered a soft cost that are not specifically tied to the actual construction of your project. But those have to be accounted for. You have to either one way or another pay for them, whether it's out of your pocket or out of your loan financing program. But those funds have to be enumerated in your budget so that you have the funds available to do that. Nobody likes a surprise, do they, Han?
No. especially the price that comes with dollars.
Yeah, exactly. And some of those can be big. We are working on a project in North Aurora, Illinois, that some of the impact fees and permitting fees exceed $100,000. And that is a pretty substantial chunk of money when it comes to what you're trying to accomplish. Now, this is a new build project, so each one would be different, and each area will be different. Obviously, it depends on your locality and what you're trying to accomplish. But that really is where the bank will help you, because you want to find the very best program out there that will help you be able to cover those costs. The other cost is an interesting one, and a lot of people who've never gone through a construction project don't even know about, and that's what's called construction financing. So during the construction period, which could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months or less, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, what you'd be looking for would be creating a environment where you would only be paying, hopefully, just interest on the money that you've spent on a month-to-month basis as you move forward. Typical, the way construction is done, that every month the contractor will do a request, an application for payment. We'll review that. We'll pass it on to the bank. The bank will then take that, do their review with their project manager, and then approve or deny that application. And that is supposed to be for work that's completed to date and what material that's been stored on site to date, along with something called retainage. That retainage is a percentage, usually 10%, that's held back to basically guarantee that the contractor and the trade contractors, their subs, will continue to do the work and finish it up as necessary so that they can get their retainage at the end. That construction financing is then taken over by permanent financing at the end of the construction period when you move in which case then you'd move into the normal program of, depending on what you're negotiated with the bank, having to, whether it's going to be a 10, 15, 20, or 25-year amortization and your monthly payments and so on. The real important aspect about the banking side is that you need to be able to be in a position that during construction, you're going to be paying your typical payment, whether it's a lease or whatever you're currently making on a month-to-month basis now for where you're at, because you're actively practicing, and you want to continue actively practice. And so you need to be able to be set up and planned for making the payment on that interest only for those months of construction. Then once you've moved out of your old location and move into the new location, then you'll be in a position to take on the permanent financing monthly payment. Kind of complicated, but at the same time, these people that know what they're doing, the lenders that have worked with dental offices before and dentists, do really know what they're doing. That's why we always recommend you deal with a bank that has a specialist, or at least someone that's knowledgeable about dealing with dentists, because it's different. The next on the list was attorney. Obviously, we all know what they do. They're in charge of legal documents, and everything that is done has to be documented. Basically, all your contracts. You're going to have contracts that are with the local agencies. You're going to have contracts with us, for example, your design professionals. You're going to have contracts with the contractor. There'll be contracts if you happen to pick a project manager and have them on the team, you'll have contracts with them. So all of that stuff will need to be looked at, and that's where they bring their expertise. The next is...
Wait, Jim. It does help a great deal if your attorney has knowledge of how a dentist's office operates, and at the same time, it'll be a plus if they have knowledge of the construction process and industry. So that way they would they could perform much better on your behalf than trying to learn something that they're not familiar with.
Oh, that's an excellent point. You're exactly correct. It is the construction world is a very interesting, somewhat scary realm because so many things are very fluid. Things happen very quickly. Money is basically moved around, large sums of money. And at any given time, if something is done incorrectly, you could be looking at expending quite a lot of dollars on things that maybe have to be fixed, and changes have to happen. All of that stuff has a dollar associated to it, and these are some large dollars. I mean, if you're looking at a project that's in the $1 million or $2 million range, at any time you could have $500,000 worth of material and equipment on the job, and there are we'll talk about this in next episodes, but there are things like insurances that are necessary for construction, and just a ton of other enjoyable details. The next is the architect and designer. So, that's where we fall into the realm. And then, Han, I'll let you talk about, our role as part of the team.
Naturally, the architect, of course, is we're not just, I can't say that we're biased in this, but the architect is a very crucial part of the equation for your team, because your architects are highly trained. They also are required to be licensed and insured to work in the state where you're located. So not just anybody can draw up a plan and give it to the contractor and run with it and build for you. Of course, it depends on how you approach the project, who get to do what for you. Naturally, the preliminary work can be done pretty much by whether it's a supply house or a contractor or a interior designer, but ultimately it will end up on the desk of an architect. Yes, the architect will have to take the responsibility for the work, that whether he or she did the work themselves or somebody else. But typically it will be more ideal and more continuous if the thinking process, the design process, start with the architect rather than being handed in from someplace else. We have run into a situation where once we receive a drawing that's done by others who are not familiar with zoning or building code and things like that, by the time that we go through it and dissect it and analyze the code requirements of it, that the result that we find may require for you to give up some real estate to accommodate code required items, or you just can't build simply because it was just too convoluted and it can't be resolved easily without you spending a ton of money. So the architect's role is rather crucial to start the project or start the design process. They should be integrated into the project early rather than be the guy who do the cleanup after everybody else get a shot at it. I mean, certainly the architects are very good at coordinating and working with the team. So, whether you want them to do the work at the start or not, they should be in there asking all the questions and getting everybody to be working together, so that way you get a better product at the end, and there's not so much cleaning up work that needs to be done, which would make life a lot easier and better for everyone, and probably lighter and more friendly to your pocketbook as well.
Exactly. Like we always like to say, we're the conductor. You don't have an orchestra without a conductor, and we're advocates that you don't do a design. And that could be a new build, that could be a renovation, it doesn't really matter. You need to have a conductor of that team. Go back and listen to our previous episode that talks about starting a dental practice and where to start. And there was a more in-depth discussion about a lot of things having to do with the architect and such. But the other key part of the architectural / design side is really crucial that you pick a individual, if it's not us, someone else that has expertise in designing and dealing with dental offices. Dental offices, in my opinion, in my 30 plus years of architecture, are one of the most extremely complicated and detailed project types. And it doesn't really have to do with the amount of cost and money, because obviously there are a lot of other projects that cost a lot more dollars and cents than a dental project is. But the importance to the detail is so crucial in a dental office. Each operatory has to be exactly the same. The equipment has to be placed in the proper location so that it lines up with the necessary things. Your business in dentistry has so many little pieces and parts that have to come together that it creates a coordination nightmare that really needs to be addressed when it comes to the construction side. And that segues into the discussion about the dental equipment supplier and how we like to have them be part of the project. And Han, I'll let you talk about the good and the bad and the ugly when it comes to dental equipment suppliers.
The equipment supplier is a must-have team member of the team. Yes, it is your prerogative to shop everywhere where you can save money, but we like to have a single source supplier. Mainly is that the fewer decision maker on your project team, the less issue you will encounter. Because when somebody dropped the baton, somebody else got to pick it up and solve the issues. When it comes to the suppliers, the equipment suppliers, they are the expert in that area. They can help you identify the equipment that will best serve you, and that will give you the best value. They know the equipment, they know the things that associate with it, they know the technologies that encompass all the things that you're going to put into your office. So engaging in a conversation with them early on will help the team to have to have the information that they need as far as what you're going to use, how much space you're going to need, the type of delivery system that you're going to use, so that the operatory can be planned for accordingly. And there's just a lot of, like Jim said, there's a lot of moving parts that they, from the equipment side, that they need to put together so that the rest of the team can have the necessary information to design from. I would encourage you to engage with them early on. Now, in terms of most of your suppliers do have an in-house design studio. Some done a very good job, and most don't. I'm trying to be kind, because if they're not trained in the area of architecture, structural engineering, they design a space that doesn't take into consideration about other building system, and it create a lot of issue for you. I've seen too often that are done that ignore locations of doors, windows, and things that have acoustic issue, fire rating issue, logistic issues, and it's what their main focus is: how many operatory, how many pieces of equipment, and then you have a equipment package you can purchase and a layout that give you the operatory count that you need or want. But then it create a lot of other issues that will need to be resolved Once you sign the dotted line and you hand that drawing to those who's responsible for making your new office or your new building work, ideally that task should be relinquished and rely solely on the architects. The architects certainly will help design the facility and coordinate that, the requirement with the equipment of it, that with the contract, with the equipment people. The equipment people is important. So our job is not to push them out of the way and things like that. We need them. We definitely need them on board, but they should not be the main person that lay out your building space.
Really, Han,
Jim?
tell us how you really feel about that.
No, I truly, I do love them. Okay.
I know. We're it's a love relationship. We love to have them on, and we love to work with them. Dental equipment suppliers are very, like say Han said, very valuable member of the team. There are a lot of great equipment suppliers out there, and it really all depends on what you're trying to accomplish and what you need to accomplish. But as Han stated, they're not the ones that should be leading this orchestra. Really, it should fall into the realm of the architect, because there are so many detailed aspects that are out of the realm of the equipment side. Han enumerated a few, and there's tons others. There's not a dental equipment supply company that I know that'll give you an architecturally stamped registered set of documents that you can go get a permit around.
The thing is, none of them have in-house architects, and that I'm aware of. Most of them are run by either an engineer. I know of one that, at least when I spoke with them, and the rest are interior designers or occasional kitchen designer and so on. They're not trained in the field of architecture. Interior designer are trained somewhat in the I can't say that they're trained in the architectural arena. Their focus is different. There's a lot of good ones that we work with, but again, they by law and licensing, they are not in charge of the building. The architects are. So ultimately, when the project allows to permit or for permit, the only seal that's on there on the drawing would belong to the architect and then the associated engineers. But you never see a interior designer seal on the drawing because they're not trained in that area to take the responsibility for the building. Again, let me just step back about the equipment people. Is that yes, I owe a lot of favor to a few of the equipment supplier reps, because there's project that we were involved in where we need their services, and a few of them have stepped up and helped us out. So it's not, I don't want to sound like I'm bashing them or anything like that. There's a lot of hardworking people out there that's involved in dealing with the equipment, and their expertise certainly are very valued on the projects that we do.
Exactly. I like to use the analogy: you don't ask a mechanic to do cardiac surgery. You use a cardiologist. So there's great mechanics and there's great cardiologists. So that's kind of the approach. Again, there are a lot of good ones out there. And then lastly, in the core group, we have the construction partner. Now that individual, we like to be of an advocate that you move forward as soon as possible with integrating a construction partner. That person or team would be someone that is extremely knowledgeable in dealing with dental facilities. Just like we talked about when it had to come to the architectural side, the contractor is just as important. They need to have gone down this road before and done these kind of projects before, because you don't want to pay for them to learn. There's a learning curve that's immense. I've had contractors vocalize to me after their first time of doing a dental project saying they'll never do another one because of the so many unique little nuances that they didn't know about, weren't aware about, weren't prepared for, and it just literally became a struggle for them to get the project done. We've heard those horror stories before. So we're always an advocate of having a construction entity who knows dental construction. And that doesn't matter if it's a renovation or if it's a new build. Your brother's friend down the road who built his house is the wrong person. Run away. Do not have that person give you any advice when it comes to construction, because they don't have a clue what's necessary in doing a proper dental facility. We like to advocate having that construction entity in early as part of the team. And a lot of people ask, well, how can you do that when you haven't even done the design work? Well, the best way to accomplish that is to hire the construction partner as a project manager. That way, you can bid out their cost, their fee to be the project manager, and then they would then manage the project in what we call an open book fashion. That open book fashion allows them to bid out the pieces, the drywall, the concrete work, the framing, all those little pieces to trade contractors or subcontractors. And then that's where you get your competitive bidding in that arena, as opposed to a general contractor method. General contractor method is you have to go completely through the design side, have all your documents created, everything done in the working drawings, which is quite a lot of expense and money. Then they create a bid around that, and then you get a number and you come back and say, oh, is this number too high or too low? It doesn't set you up to succeed. Having that construction manager up day one, when we're sitting down and talking about the preliminary design, is not too early, because they know what it costs on a day-to-day basis to put up concrete, to put in floors, to put in walls, to put on a roof. They'll be able to be a valuable resource, because all these team members that we were just talking about are there for one reason and only one reason, and that is to give you information. Each one has their specific area. Each one has their specific goal. They give information to the team that then is coordinated, collected, and it allows the decision-making process. Because as you move forward, you may say, well, I'd like to have 8 ops, but can I afford 10? Well, we can't give you that answer right now. Han and I can't, because we don't know what the particular design looks like. But as we move forward and create a preliminary design, for example, then the construction manager will look at it and say, okay, I'm estimating that this will cost X. Well, then we evaluate that against a budget with your banker and your accountant and say, yes, you can get the 10 that you wanted. So any other words on the core, Han?
No, I think the project manager certainly is a very valuable player. They substitute, or should I say, they function at a higher level than a GC or a general contractor. With them on board early, they certainly will help to make sure that the design is on target in terms of dollars. They can start the bidding process so that we have some idea what the cost, up to date will be, and that always help. It's good to know what the cost at the point of the design at any given time would be, so that that one is control, that the architect and the owner can manage the level of finishes and things like that. So if we need to pull back, we can, and do it early in the process rather than do a full-blown set of drawing and discover that the owner can't afford. Architects are not necessarily the right people to give you dollars and cents. They are artistic folks, and they certainly they like the privilege to design you a Taj Mahal. But if you can't afford it, then we need to know that early on. So I think the core team so far is on cue, Jim. So what's next?
Obviously, once you get done with the core team, those are the individuals you need to have from the beginning. Now, once the project scope has been determined based around the schematic design or the preliminary design that Han creates, and that scope defines the areas within your project, whether you're going to have this many ops, whether you're going to have this kind of work. If this was a renovation, you may say, well, I'm only renovating and putting in 2 ops. Well, that's fine. You may not need some of these following team members. But if you're doing a full-blown project from the ground up, you're going to need every one of these team members and maybe a few more. But the next group, which is actually a pretty extensive list, and again, I'd like to recommend to everyone, go to our website, www.hjtdesign.com, and download our construction guideline book. The in-depth list of everything we've talked about is in there. And also, please remember that if you'd like to call in and ask Han or I a question, the call-in number is 657-383-1442. And at any time, you don't have to wait till a specific time. Just call in. If we see you come up on the board, we'll enter you into the show. And Han always likes to say, you don't have to give your real name. Right, Han?
That's right. Nobody's going to track you.
Nope, we won't. And this next list is a unique one, and we'll go down through it, and then we'll talk about it. But we have dental staff. Your staff is a key part of this. You'll need to ask them a few things and get their advice on how they want to look at how this might work. Management consultant.
Wait, Jim, let me interject on that. On the first one.
Han, I want to go through the list and then we'll go back through each one because the list is pretty extensive and I just like to rattle it off pretty quick. But we have management consultant, clinical consultant, a civil engineer, a mechanical engineer, a plumbing engineer, an electrical engineer, a structural engineer, an interior designer, a data engineer, a technology IT engineer, a geotechnical engineer, a land surveyor, and that's just probably 90% of the it's a list, but it's about 90% of the possibilities. Yeah. There might be some other specialists. But of that, each one of those people have a specific role that may fit within your project budget. Your project scope. So if you're doing a new build, you're going to probably have every one of those. If you're doing a renovation, you might not have all of them. So let's go to the dental staff. Han, what do you like to hear from the dental staff?
I am a strong advocate for getting your staff involved. Mainly, they also share the space with you. Sometimes their career lasts just as long as yours, and sometimes they switched out. It is important to find out how they prefer, how they like to work and live in that space. But I think it's very crucial that you, as the owner, the team leader, makes the final decision. So often that we work on projects where the client has great relationship with their staff, and because they become so personally involved that they're afraid that they would offend their staff if they do not oblige to what the staff want, and so they succumb to what the staff want. I'll give you a prime example. I work on a project where the facility is divided in half. So one side of the building is run by one dentist, and the other side is by another dentist and his or her team. So the central core of the building was basically clinical support. When we look at it, it's that almost like you cut the building in half, and so that everything is designed so that it minimized the amount of walking. It basically centralized everything and make everything as efficient as possible. So you want the amount of walking for the staff on one side versus the other to be pretty much equal. With that in mind, we explained to the group of doctors who own the practice, and they agree with it until after the drawing is done and moving forward. And they say that the staff prefer to go from one side of the building to the other side of the building, which make it very inefficient. But it was the influence of the staff that create a detriment and inefficiency in the design, rather than the owner saying this makes more sense, this is what we have. So listen to your staff is good, but you make the final decision. I advocate that you get them involved and get their feedback, but also advocate that you make the final decision because you're the owner and what will work best for you. Staff will change. You won't.
Exactly. Management consultants the next. Obviously, that falls in the realm of your professional consultant that helping you put together your systems and your procedures. They will be an important individual to be part of the design of the new project, because there might be new systems and new procedures out there that require pieces and parts, that require systems that need to be built into the architecture, into the design, whether it's monitors, whether it's the ability to communicate with the client, or with the patient, or whether it's ability to be able to communicate with staff. That all goes under your management consultant role. That person's important. The next is clinical consultant. Anna, I'll let you talk about them.
Well, I run only into a few clinical consultants. They may work with your clinical team to find what would be the ideal and most efficient process and system that you can implement. I'm not sure if they actually have a lot of influence on how the building is designed. They may have influence on particular areas such as sterilization. Lab is not as important, but sterilization, in my opinion, is like the heart of your operation. So the clinical consultant may have some influence on that, but it's limited. And that's at least from my exposure.
Exactly. Next on the list is civil engineer. Civil engineer has basically a responsibility for everything outside the building. So if you're doing a renovation of an existing building in a retail center, you probably won't need a civil engineer. But if you are dealing with a new build or anything that has anything in the way of an addition to your property, your existing building, for example, you will need the individual civil engineers be part of the team. They have to deal with everything, like I say, that has to do with the outside of the building, the underground utilities, the water disbursement that comes off of the building, the parking lot, all those zoning issues that are out there having to do with the number of parking spaces necessary, lighting that has to do with the exterior. There's ordinances and codes that require a certain amount of lighting in a lot of municipalities. So that all of that falls into the realm of the civil engineer. Next on the list we have is our mechanical engineer. Mechanical engineer and plumbing engineer and electrical engineer kind of typically are lumped together into one group. We hire that work out to consultants that are specialists in that. It's very technical. They coordinate a lot of their work with the dental equipment supplier, so that that electrical box is in the right place. The water line coming up is in the right place. The nitric oxide is right place. Everything, it has to be in its correct location and of the right size. Mechanical engineer also deals with your heating and cooling. So they provide the necessary design for your air conditioning, for your heating, how it's distributed throughout your building. They have a code that has to be followed by the building code systems as to fresh air that needs to be part of the system in the building. And that falls in the realm of both new build and renovation. So there are times you'll need that engineer or those engineers. Plumbing has to do with, of course, water, sewer, gas, all the things necessary that have to basically have a pipe involved with them, including med gas. Now, there is a unique aspect in the plumbing side is med gas has to be put in by a certified individual. You've just had a project where we're dealing with that.
Yeah, let me see. I'm just going to go kind of broad on this one. When you hire a contractor or consider a contractor in your project, of course, you want them to have as much dental experience as possible. One crucial question to ask, particularly if you're going to have a hard plumb nitrous system, is whether they have experience in that. Okay, it's important because just simply having dental experience may be a rude discovery when you find out that they have never installed a hard plumb nitrous system. The plumber, and it's I'm pretty sure it's national, is that the plumber that's going to put in the plumbing for the nitrous system, which includes your oxygen, it have to be certified and licensed to do that work. Not just any Joe plumber with a license can touch that, because it's a specialty. I mean, first of all, it's if the regular plumber messed up on hooking up the line for your sink, no big deal. You may have a mess, a water mess. If the plumber messed up on cross the gas line, you can have a big life and death situation. So it's a safety, life and safety issue. So it's usually done, if not always done, by a licensed certified med gas plumber.
Absolutely. And then the electrical engineer deals with all the electrical aspects, coordination, electrical needs for your equipment, lighting, outlets, you name it. Structural engineer is next on the list. The structural engineer really falls into the realm of a new build, with the exception of if you're doing an addition or dealing with anything that cuts into the existing structure. That means things like floors, beams, columns, roof structure, those kind of things. They evaluate and design so that the buildings don't fall down, in essence. Interior designer. Interior designers are fun folks to work with, but at the same time, we're a strong advocate that if you're going to have an interior designer on the job who wants to be, that you want as part of this team, you do that from the very beginning. Integrating an interior designer after the fact or midway through the process could be detrimental to the process timing, as well as slow everything down. But at the same time, they're not up to speed with exactly what has been decided and what's going on. So integrate these people from the very beginning. We don't have a problem working with interior designers. We like them. But please bring them in as part of the team in the beginning. Interior designer's role would typically be everything from the branding, the look that you want to create. They would help in selecting materials within the facility. Some of the things is like a crossover between what they do and what we do as architects and designers, but they would help in selecting the furniture, non-dental furniture, as well as art, those kind of things as falls into their realm. Data engineer, go ahead, Han.
In working with interior designer, it does help if you select a interior designer that had not necessarily dental experience, because I'm not sure what is the specific when they say dental, a dental interior designer, because material is materials, colors is colors. But one that has experience in healthcare facilities.
Yeah.
Because it's crucial. You're talking about an environment where you're going to have a lot of pathogens, and body fluids and stuff like that need to be considered. So the material that they use or they select and specify for your project need to be able to maintain and easy to clean, because an office for an insurance company or for a realty company is not the same as a dentist's office in terms of aseptic and keeping things sterile and clean as much as possible. It's important. It's an area that should be considered for not just simply anybody that can pick out colors.
Very good point. Next on the list was data engineer, and we lumped those together with technology IT engineer, and that has to do with all of your aspects of the technical side of what systems you're using, whether particular software you're using, how you want to set up your monitors, how you want to set up your operatories, how you want to set up your servers, all those things. And those engineers are people that are specialists in working with that, and they coordinate their work with the electrical engineer that's part of the team. So there's some coordination back and forth, because one may specify the conduit that has to go in the wall or the floor, where the other specifies the cable that is pulled through that conduit. If the conduit doesn't exist, you can't get the cable between point A and point B. So it's crucial, and this could fall under both your new build as well as your renovation. Next, we've got a couple more, is geotechnical engineer. Geotechnical engineer works in conjunction with the civil engineer, and they deal with the soils aspect of your project. If you're doing an addition, if you're doing a new build, you need to know what the soil is like that you're going to be placing your building on, because your structural engineer will need to know how he can design the foundations that hold your building up, and he can't do that until he understands what the soil is capable of bearing. So it's a technical aspect, but at the same time, they're crucial to providing information to the team. Land surveyor is the last.
Jim?
Go ahead, Hawk. Yeah, go ahead.
Jim, the geotechnical people are the one that give you the composition of the soil, so that it allowed the structural engineer to determine what would be the best foundation system to use on your building, right?
Absolutely. And there are times when it's found that there's junk underground that needs to be spanned over, so the foundations will need to be of a certain type. Whereas in maybe you have wonderful ground with good soil-bearing pressures, and you could put in simple spread foundations. So all of that stuff is crucial to what has to be done. And the land surveyor is an important individual, because they're the ones that actually define the perimeters of your property. Now, land surveyors are not always necessary in renovations if that information is already readily available from the original project. But land surveyors help to define, like, say, the perimeters, the outline of your property. They also deal with things like topography, which is the elevations of your ground, so that the civil engineer can do their work. So, it's a pretty extensive list. There are others that we haven't talked about. There might be some other specialty examples like landscape architects and a few other things.
You have signage people. That's also involved in the project. Jim, let me kind of stress on the surveyor. Even though it could be a project that's done all involved interior work, but I've been running into projects interior build out where the municipality require that we show a survey of the property. Okay, I don't know why, but it had been a very common request or requirement on a project.
Well, a lot of times a lending institution might require a survey or what's called an ALTA survey so that they have an outline of the particular property that they're actually putting down as part of the lending package on. So, yeah, there are a lot of other things we could talk about, and we're running out of time here. So I'd like to jump into very quickly that, this team, sit down with your core. Your core will then develop your scope. Once you've developed your scope, then you'll be able to identify your other team members that need to be part of that. Get them integrated into the design process as soon as possible, as early as possible, and then we can move forward into the many next steps that we're going to be talking about in our next upcoming episodes and shows. I'd like to also put out and let everybody know that on our October 30th presentation radio show, we will be having a guest. This is Mike Montgomery with Live Oak Bank. Mike is their senior loan officer. You can find information out about him at www.liveoakbank.com. As I had stated before, Mike presented at the seminar that we were at on Saturday up in Chicago, has a wealth of information having to do with small business loans, SBAs, and they specialize in dental financing. They have a program that is 100% financed with the right kind of factors. I mean, he's just a wealth of knowledge, a real fun guy to talk to. So mark it down on your calendar. Be able to, if you'd like, call in and ask him about any question that you want to ask. But look forward to having Mike be part of our show on the October 30th date. With that, Han, I want to jump into real quick in the few minutes we have left about what's happening on Dental Town. What's the hot stuff?
There was a huge, lengthy discussion about the type of cabinet use. Of course, it is on. You can, if you're building an office, everybody want to sell cabinets to you. So whether it's dental specific cabinets that are pre-manufactured, you also have a choice of custom cabinets that are made locally by, the local cabinet fabricator, and then you also one of the items on the discussion was IKEA cabinets. It was rather interesting is that the thing, the discussion is cost versus quality, and I think it depends on who's spending, who's buying, who's selling, and who's spending the money. We find that the biggest discussions or argument is, you have to buy dental specific cabinet because they've been engineered, they've been tested, their warranty and all of that stuff. But if you're starting out and building your practice with on a budget, you have to have other options. Custom cabinet will give you, they say dental cabinets are usually specific to cabinets within your clinical area. It would be in your operatories, it would be in your sterilization, and yes, they're pricey, okay, but they're also great. They're great products. But the other option is if you're on a budget and you want some other options is custom, and custom can fit anything. They cover the entire office, not just your clinical area. They would take care of your office, your front desk, everything for a fraction of the dental cabinets. And then, of course, you can also go to the prefab of IKEA. The big thing is it will work. It's it's decent quality. You have to pick and select and make sure that it meets the ADA or American with Disability Act. so that you're not putting something in that would not be in compliance. But it's a choice. I myself am not an advocate for any of them. I think they all work. They will fit into the criteria and economic that the client's looking for. One argument that I put out is that if you're building your own building and you're going to be there for another 20 or 30 years, and it makes sense to put in high quality stuff that will last you for a long, long time. But if you're leasing a space and you're gonna have to leave the cabinets and stuff like that, I wouldn't put in the high end stuff so that your landlord can enjoy it after you leave, and then lease it to the next guy and charge him for it. So it have to be right. It's not the right thing or the wrong thing. It has to be the right thing for your particular circumstances. It was an interesting conversation or discussion. Unfortunately, you have some that sell the products so they bash everybody else. But if you're the consumer looking for options, you have three great options. It just depends on how much you want to spend and how long you're going to use it. It was great, Jim.
Well, that would be an interesting discussion, because it is an answer that doesn't have a direct answer, because it all depends on your particular use. Like you said, if you're having something that you only intend to use as a transition into your next facility, then pick something that you can take with you, or pick something that is not that expensive, as opposed to buying the ultimate. But if you're planning on staying in that facility for 10 or plus years or more, then maybe you would go with something that has a longer lifespan. Each type of piece of equipment has a given lifespan with it, based upon its quality of construction. So one thing will last longer or shorter than another, and that has to be evaluated. IKEA cabinets are great for their particular use. Just don't expect them to do the same thing that maybe a custom cabinet would do, or a cabinet that is done by a manufacturing company that specializes in dental. So a very, very interesting topic. Well, with that,
let me just have 30 seconds, Jim. The thing is, everybody have warranty. Okay, so when you deal with dental equipment or dental cabinets, they have their warranty. When you deal with custom cabinets, you usually have a 1-year warranty. When you deal with IKEA, particularly because IKEA is made for residential use, if you install it into your commercial office, there is no warranty.
No. Important point.
That's the catch.
Great. Well, a very important point. Well, with that, I'd like to also remind everybody that if you'd like to get more information about us and our organization and what we can do, please go to www.hjtdesign.com. There's a pile of information there available for your review. And if you'd like to contact one of us, you can get a hold of us at 1-866-213-1268. With that, I would like to thank everyone for spending their evening with us. We are, Han and I know we're both very excited about doing this radio show. It's something that allows us to be able to, it's fun. It allows us to be able to get out and get more information in your hands, so that you have at least some more knowledge about things, because we know that renovation or a new build or the prospect of trying to figure out what to do is a potentially scary subject. Most people only do this once.
Mainly is that being informed, it gives you power.
Exactly, and you only do this once or twice. So there's a few that do it more, but on average, you may only do one renovation or one new build in your career. So the next episode coming up next week is going to be titled, "I Need More Clinical Space. Do I remodel and expand or build new?" So that's going to be a fun one, and
that should be interesting.
That will be a fun one. We'll have a very in-depth discussion about all the aspects of that particular subject. So with that, I'd like to say good evening and look forward to next time. Han?
Take care, everyone. Until next time. Good night.
You've been listening to HJT Design Radio Straight Talk with Jim and Han. To contact us and find out more info about upcoming shows, please log on to our website at www.hjtdesign.com. Until next time.